Hey! Yo, everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video. Although I don't know what else I would be bringing you, so same as usual. And today we're going to be doing another beginner's guide, and that is to get to know none other than the second Robin himself, the Red Hood, Jason Todd. In this video, I'm going to be doing a couple things for you. I'm going to be giving you some general information about Jason Todd as well as a brief history of the character. I will then go into his powers and abilities, and I will also jump into the essential reading list, talking about the comics that you should pick up if you want to get to know the character. I'll also jump on some outside of comic media such as movies and televisions, and finally wrap things up with my general thoughts on Jason as a comic book character and a member of the Bat family. Jason Todd happened to be the second Robin to Batman, and he would be, unfortunately, the first Robin to come after Dick Grayson. See, a lot of comparison would come to the character from comic book fans, and because of which, at first he was seen to be too much of a carbon copy clone of Dick Grayson. After the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Jason Todd's history was completely changed as well as the character itself, and he was seen too drastic of a character for comic book fans, away from what they knew about Dick Grayson. I guess he was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. Jason Todd came from a broken home. His father was a criminal and his mother was a drug addict. He lived on the streets, and by chance and happenstance he came by the Batmobile, tried to steal the wheels off of it, and this impressed Batman. Batman saw the potential in Jason and wanted to kind of get him away from the life of crime and thievery and give him an opportunity to actually prove himself as an individual. And for the most part, he was a successful Robin. Him and Batman blended well together, and they enjoyed each other's company. For the first time in a long time, Batman was happy. Unfortunately, the baggage from Jason's past did follow him, and having aggressive tendencies led to him debatingly whether or not he killed a individual. Now, granted, this individual was a murderer and a rapist, but it also broke Batman's one rule, which is no kill. This caused Batman to ground Jason Todd and bench him for the foreseeable future. That was up until Jason was killed by the Joker. He eventually was resurrected, and means of which he was resurrected changes based off continuity, but as it stands right now, he was thrown into the Lazarus pit by Talia al Ghul, which resulted in him coming back to life. But because he was beaten to death by the Joker, he had brain damage, and he shared that Lazarus pit with Ra's al Ghul, which caused him to go a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Jason would come back as the Red Hood to taunt and also challenge Batman on why Batman never avenged him, and really ask the question why the Joker was still alive. When Batman went missing and presumed dead, Jason would pick up the mantle of Batman as a dark vigilante who would go out there and kill the enemies of Batman. He was eventually confronted by Dick Grayson, and a battle for the cowl ensued between the two of them, with Tim Drake also in the fray. Jason would go through a bit of a antagonist or villainous stage before coming out of it as the Red Hood anti-hero. And as the anti-hero Red Hood, he would eventually start to mend his relationship with Bruce and the rest of the Bat family. To the point that although Bruce does not like the fact that he kills, he does respect Bruce's rule and doesn't kill anyone around Bruce. He actually calms down in the later years and really doesn't kill that many people, at least as of right now. However, that doesn't mean he doesn't take a life from time to time. Jason's a very complicated character with a lot of complicated history, but he's also a character that's very diverse in how he's grown and evolved throughout the years, which has helped the character on a whole stand out throughout all the different Robins and secondary characters that Batman has had. So, with that said, let's talk a bit about Jason's powers and his abilities, because boy does Jason have quite a bit of, well, both. So when it comes down to Jason's powers and abilities, he's definitely the most diverse and multi-trained out of all the Batman family members. Jason, when he started off as Robin, was given all the basic training that every Robin gets from Batman. I use basic loosely. He is an exceptional martial artist when he was a Robin, learning up to 8 different forms of martial arts. A skilled marksman, a detective, as well as a manhunter, an escape artist, as well as a fantastic acrobat. However, a lot of his diversity came after Jason died. Upon being resurrected, he gained a lot of tutelage from two different sources. First is the League of Assassins, which trained him in various forms of martial arts, as well as training him in using blade weapons such as knives, swords, as well as using firearms, particularly handguns, but not opposed to rifles and semi-automatics. Jason would also gain a fair amount of training from the All-Cast, which is a monk/assassin group that is in a constant battle with the Untitled. Jason would become such a proficient martial artist that he would be able to go toe-to-toe with the League of Assassins, taking down big names like Lady Shiva, going up against Braun Tiger, Cheshire, and probably most notably, he was able to take on and defeat Cassandra Cain, utilizing her own ability to read body language against her and make it a weapon against her. Jason has a lot of weaponry to his arsenal. He carries 2 dual-wielding pistols, as well as various different bat gadgets and batarangs, but his most notable is his blade weapons, which is his weird, curvy blade that he gained, which can cut through most material. Most notably, it was able to cut Batman's belt. It also makes it so that when it stabs someone, healing from it is pretty difficult. He also gained the mystical ability and spirit control ability to summon the All Blades, which are basically spirit swords that can cut through the Untitled. And that also ties into his training, which is still kind of vague from the All-Cast, which is spirit control. He doesn't display it all too often, but when he does, he shows that he's a formidable individual in his knowledge of this field. So let's jump into the essential reading list, and we'll start where Jason started, and that is his time as Robin. Unfortunately for Jason, he had one of the shortest tenures as Robin, with only Stephanie Brown being the only other character in that role to have a shorter tenure. This makes it tough to collect stories for Jason Todd in trade form as Robin. However, in recent years, DC has been putting out new volumes that do collect these adventures. These volumes are still coming out. And we might as well start with Batman the Dark Knight Detective. This is a post-crisis collection of various different stories that involve several different characters in Batman's family and rogue gallery, such as Joker, Catwoman, Penguin, but it showcases a lot of Jason Todd as Robin, so it's a good starting point for anyone who wants to get into him as Robin and really to get into the character itself. But it's the next volume and series of stories that I think is more important for him being Robin, and that is Batman the Caped Crusader. Volume 1 itself is great because it introduces Jason Todd as a little bit more of an edgier Robin who has a chip on his shoulder, as well as showcasing the story that eventually led to the question on whether or not Jason, as Robin, pushed someone out of a window or off a balcony. That is really kind of a big turning point for the character, which will set up his course of actions in the future. Next is probably the most poignant story in Jason's history, as well as Batman's, and that is A Death in the Family. This is the story in which Jason Todd dies. And it's our fault. The fans voted in to see if Jason would live or die throughout this story. And whereas death is usually the end of a character development for most characters, this is actually the beginning of Jason's character development. The story itself is a little silly, but it's Jason going off trying to find out who his real mom is. He has 3 candidates on who it could be, but unfortunately throughout his adventures, he is caught up with the Joker, who beats Jason down with a crowbar to an edge of his life, and then blows him up with a bomb. It's a tragic story for the Dark Knight, and a tragic story for Jason, but a necessary one that is going to push the character forward and really lay out his destiny for all the stories to come. A must-read for anyone who wants to get into Jason Todd. Batman Hush might be the only title on this list that you could probably go without picking up. Everything that happens in this with Jason Todd is eventually recapped in later stories. However, canonically it is the first appearance of Jason after he came back to life. The confusing thing in this is that we don't know it's Jason until a later story. See, in the story, Batman is confronted what seems to be a resurrected Jason Todd and fights him. Eventually, towards the end of the fight, we find out that it's Clayface. However, in a later story, we find out that it was Jason Todd up to a certain point, and then he switched places with Clayface. Regardless of this, if you don't want to get Batman Hush, that's perfectly fine if you want to save money for other Jason stories. However, Batman Hush in itself is a fantastic story, and it's a good story for Jason Todd because it kind of sets the stage for how Jason thinks and feels towards Batman in the next few stories that we're going to talk about. So, it's really up to you. Now on to probably the most important and best Jason Todd story on this list, and just in general one of the best Batman stories, and that is Batman Under the Hood. Jason Todd has recently been resurrected and has returned to Gotham. He's a man on a mission. He's taken over the criminal underworld, and he is basically trying to prove to Batman two things. First is a statement. I'm a better Batman than you. Yes, I kill. Yes, I do things in the gray. But look at how much I've cleaned up this world in the short amount of time of being back by breaking your rule. The second thing that Jason brings to the table is a question to Batman. Why is the Joker still alive? Why haven't you avenged me? I am fine with the fact that you can save me, but every day that the Joker lives is an insult to our memory together. It's a tragic story, one of which of a child basically asking his father figure, do you love me? And if you do, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you avenge my death? It's a broken character dealing with a broken situation, and it really sets the stage for what Jason Todd will be in the coming years. And like I said, one of the best stories out there for the character. This does come in 2 volumes. I did put up a picture of both volumes, so you might want to pick those up. Red Hood The Lost Days is a complement and a sequel to Under the Red Hood. And the basic gist of this is that it follows Jason Todd's journey from his resurrection all the way up to the beginning of Under the Hood. Although it technically takes place before Under the Hood, I feel as though it works better as a sequel because it fills in a lot of the gaps and motivations for Jason Todd leading up to that story. It shows his interactions with Hush. It also shows his interactions with Talia al Ghul, the League of Assassins, and eventually shows the development of the character and his motivations. Jason Todd isn't necessarily an evil character. He's a broken character, and this story does a good job at showcasing the fact that he is broken. And then deep down in his heart, he wants to do the right thing. It's just how he does it is probably not the best way. Definitely a good read and a must pick up for Jason fans. Batman Battle for the Cowl is a very straightforward story. Batman, who is presumed dead, he's really just missing throughout time, it's a long story, but Batman, who is presumed dead, has left a big gap in Gotham, and the criminal underworld has taken hold. So it's up to someone to fill that void. Jason Todd decides to take up the mantle as Batman as a much more aggressive, murderous Batman who's willing to take the life of his enemies in order to ensure the peace of Gotham. However, there's one man in the way of Jason Todd retaining that mantle. And that man is Dick Grayson, the first Robin. You get to see an ultimate showdown between the two, and you really get to see how their relationship develops and grows from this point going forward, because they do have a unique relationship similar to that of Raphael and Leonardo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Regardless of which, this is a great story and a quick read for anyone who wants to pick it up. Next on the list is Batman and Robin, Batman Reborn. Now, Jason shows up a couple times in the Batman Robin series. With this volume, he basically is trying to do what he did previously, and that's prove to Dick Grayson that his methods, his approach to vigilantism and trying to be a hero, are more effective than the ones that were laid out by Batman. The question is he right, and does he succeed? This really, like I said, showcases the relationship between Jason and Dick as brothers who have different ideologies but ultimately want the same thing. And it comes to a big climactic clash between Batman, Dick Grayson, and Red Hood, Jason Todd. I was debating on whether or not to put up another volume, which is volume 4, White Knight, which does showcase Jason and Bruce interacting a bit more, and you can pick that up if you like, but I do think that if you had to pick between the two of them, Batman and Robin, Batman Reborn, you should get. So let's talk about the New 52 and Red Hood's first ongoing title, and that's Red Hood and the Outlaws. Now, Red Hood and the Outlaws kind of came in with a bit of controversy in the first going, and that wasn't because of Jason Todd, but rather because of Starfire. Starfire was drawn by many people believed in a very over-sexualized nature, and that can be debated by a lot of people because Starfire in herself is a very promiscuous or sexualized character. Her original Inception by George Perez showed this. So the costume she wears in this is not too much different or no more revealing than her original New Teen Titans costume. But I think it's because of how Kenneth Rockerford, who is a fantastic artist, portrayed the character. But we're not talking about Starfire here. If you can get past that controversy that came up, you'll find that this volume is a fantastic start to a new era for Red Hood, establishing a lot of the tropes, ideas, and concepts that would really push the character forward for many years. I'm putting Volume 1 on here, as well as I'm going to put Volume 1 of his Rebirth run, and I'll talk about that when I get to it, because they're both good runs, and they're both done by the same writer, Scott Lobdell. He's basically been at the helm of Red Hood since the New 52, so 2011 up till now. But in general, right, if you like the New 52 run, if you enjoyed Redemption, this volume, then jump on it, dive a bit more into it, and really see how far the New 52 stuff goes. There's also a subset stories called Red Hood and Arsenal, which is basically just that, Red Hood and Arsenal. But we'll talk more about the Rebirth stuff in just a second. But if you do enjoy this volume, and you can get past the controversy, you'll find that there's a lot of good establishing lore, mythos, and some fun stuff for Red Hood in here, and it might entice you to go pick up the rest of the New 52 run. So let's talk a little bit about Rebirth. The big difference for Red Hood in this is that his team changes. It's no longer Starfire and Arsenal, but rather Artemis, the Amazon warrior, and one of the many Bizarros that exist. Although this is probably the most developed Bizarro we've seen in forever. And the basic gist of this is that Red Hood is working for Batman undercover as a... showing off as a villain, but he's really working for Batman to get deeper into the underworld of Gotham. This is a really great re-establishing of the character and the title, and of the two, between the New 52 and the Rebirth stuff, I would say the Rebirth stuff is a little bit more balanced in terms of the story and the characters, although they do change up the comic a bit and introduce some new characters before going back and bringing Artemis and Bizarro back. I'm rambling here. What I'm basically saying is that this is a great start to a great chapter in Red Hood's publication and for the character itself. And if you do enjoy this volume, The Dark Trinity, it's a play off of the Trinity, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Red Hood, Bizarro, and Artemis, then I think you will really want to look at the other Rebirth stuff, and this is a great jumping on point too. If for some reason you didn't read the rest of the New 52, you did just the Redemption, you can go into this and the Rebirth stuff and be perfectly fine. So we're going to wrap up the comic recommendations with Batman and Robin Eternal. This is a 2-volume series, 26 issues basically, and it's a story that is taking place in 2 time periods, the present and the past, and it follows Dick Grayson as the main character, but Jason Todd plays a pretty important role because it's not necessarily just about Dick Grayson, it's about all the Robins and everyone that's really held that title. And it's also good to see Jason Todd playing nice with the rest of the Bat family and seeing his interactions with them. Putting all that aside, even though this is a great Jason Todd story with him as a supporting character, it's just a great story on a whole, and definitely better than its predecessor, which was Batman Eternal. The other great thing about this is you do not need to read Batman Eternal to enjoy Batman and Robin Eternal. This is its own self-contained story, and a definite recommendation, and a good, end cap to this Jason Todd essential reading list. So some quick recommendations of things to watch outside of comics, some media, such as movies and television, and we might as well start with the big one, and that's Batman Under the Red Hood. This is a DVD movie that you can pick up or stream online, and it's a direct adaptation of Batman Under the Hood. There are a few minor changes here and there to kind of fit the narrative of the story, but for the most part, it's pretty close to the source material. Jensen Ackles comes on as Red Hood. You might know him from Supernatural, and he does a fantastic job voicing the character. Actually, his voice of the character is what I think of the character when I read the comic sometimes, and his portrayal of him, especially towards the end where Batman, Joker, and Red Hood have their confrontation with each other, is just so compelling. And I think a lot of people consider this, along with DC New Frontier, as the best of the DC animated films. Or Mask of the Phantasm in there too. It's up in that caliber of how good this film is. Great acting. They got a lot of people on there. Joe DiMaggio comes in as the Joker. Fantastic fight scenes, and it encompasses how tragic this character and how tragic this story is. And I couldn't recommend this enough. I actually probably recommend watching it right after you read the comic itself. And it's one of the best portrayals of Jason outside of the comics. The other big recommendation I have for you in media outside of comic books is the Titans TV show. There's been 2 seasons so far, season 1 and season 2, and Jason Todd has shown up in both of them. He is kind of an instrumental character for the team, and he's played by actor Curran Walters, I believe that's his name, and he does a really good job of the character. As of right now, Jason is still Robin. He hasn't been killed yet, and he hasn't returned as Red Hood. He's still under the Robin persona, but he does a very good job as playing Jason Todd as kind of an immature shithead, but in a very endearing way. You can tell that this character has a lot of baggage to him, and they do a great job with the suit, and they have a great job with the fight scenes. And Titans on a whole is a great show to binge watch. Watching it individually week to week is tough, but watching it as a whole product is really good. And now's the time to do it, right? You can eat up 2 seasons of it right away. The only thing is you have to get the DC Universe app, but you might as well do it anyways, because if you get the app, you get this TV show, you'll get the Under the Red Hood movie, I believe, and you'll have access to pretty much all the stories that I recommended in this video. So I'm not being paid to plug this, but the DC Universe app does have a lot of pros to it, and this TV show is definitely one of them. So go check it out, enjoy it, and love it like I do. So my final thoughts on Jason Todd as a character is he is definitely one of the most interesting, diverse, and unique characters in Batman mythos. And I think he's often overlooked by people because of his history as Robin. He wasn't a popular Robin, but what DC has done with the character and how much he has grown and evolved has been nothing but glorious. He's one of my favorite Batman characters, and my second favorite character to have had the persona of Robin. Nightwing, Dick Grayson is my favorite Batman supporting character that spans out of the Batman family, but Jason is pretty much close second. He's really fantastic, and if you look at the character, the big word that goes with him, and I said this before, is he's a tragic character, and he's constantly trying to make up for what he's done and dealing with what he's had to gone through. But out of tragedy does come triumph, and there is some great moments where the character grows, evolves, and eventually reaches a more healthier point than he was previously. I recommend anyone who's been on the fence with Jason Todd to give this essential comic reading list a chance, and to give the character a chance, because at the end of the day, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised on how amazing he is. And on the whole, I hope you guys enjoyed this essential reading list. I'm going to try to put more of these out, and of course you can go over to my Twitter when I put up a poll on what the next essential list will be. You guys get a choice in what I will be doing. And as always, you can follow me on social media, and you can contribute to my Patreon. Every little bit counts towards the channel and towards myself. But like I said, I hope this is useful for everyone. This has been helpful, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed making it because I love Jason Todd so much, and it's great to talk about a character who, honestly, in the fandom, probably doesn't get as much love as he should.